It was 1:15 a.m., June 13th, 2014, when I heard the piercing jingle of my hospital pager as it shook me awake. I was sleeping in the hospital on-call room as part of my overnight on-call responsibilities as a chaplain, and it was my first overnight shift. In fact, it was my first week working as a chaplain in a hospital, period. Still groggy, I flipped through the orientation documents in my briefcase, looking for that one-page sheet, you know, the one that tells you the extension that you call when you get a page. I'd never touched a pager before this night, except for my mom worked in tech, and so once in the 90s I got to hold like the big brick pagers, but that was the only time. Maybe some of you remember them. And I soon worked out this night out the tiny hieroglyphics on the pager, and I used the hospital phone, it was kind of greasy, to make the dial. This is Chaplain Dylan, I began. I was trying to follow the script that they give you here. I just got a page from this number. What is the situation? Just patting myself on the back. I was doing pretty good, right? And a heavy, deep male New York accent suddenly cut me off. Said, "Hey, yeah, how you doing, Chaplain? I got a woman dying up here. Family crying, the whole 9 yards. Can you come up and work your magic?" I said, trying to find my place again in the script. "What is the name of the patient and the room number?" I asked. And he rushes through the important bits, but I understand the name and which ICU wing I'm supposed to go to. "Okay," I stammer. "Could you tell me the faith tradition of the patient, please?" "They're dying fast, Chappie," he says. "You should probably get up here before she kicks the bucket." And with that, the nurse hangs up. And I'm staring in disbelief at myself in this dusty mirror. I tie my tie around my neck. I holster my pager on my belt buckle, and I make my way through the catacombs of this hospital until I reach the main hospital area. My smile was very nervous, and I was looking for some support, so I greet the security officer at the front desk. He doesn't acknowledge my existence, even when I'm looking right at him, just ignores me. So I keep walking. I take the elevator up to the 6th floor, and then I remember the ICU I'm looking for is actually on the 7th floor, and so I decide to take the stairs. I go up one flight, but then I remember that the 7th floor ICU is actually locked, and my ID can't get in, and so I jog back down the stairs and go back to the elevator and take the elevator back up, and I'm sweating profusely at this point. And I arrive at the ICU I'm supposed to be at. So for those of you keeping track at home, this is not going as planned. It's clear which room the patient is in because it's the only room where there is screaming and crying and preaching. Yes, preaching. The patient is deceased, but the 25 Southern Baptist family members crowded inside her room are praying up a storm. And as I work my way through the hall, I hear cries of, "Jesus, have mercy," and "God, lift up your angel to heaven, bring her home." At the entrance to the room, I am petrified. What the heck am I supposed to do here? I'm asking myself, as I nervously rub the Purell into my hands and I get ready to enter the room. And I'll be honest with you, a big part of me wanted to run. A voice in my head said, "Well, they're saying God enough. They don't really need a chaplain, do they?" You can tell I was pretty new to the career, right? But before I could run, the nurse from the phone call earlier, he grabs me on my shoulder and he gestures to the open door of the patient's room and he says, in a voice that is far too loud for 1:30 in the morning in an ICU, he says, "Hey family, pastor's here to pray with you." And he pushes me in. And just like that, I didn't have time to be nervous. I am pulled into this room, literally by the hands of this grieving widower who is ordering me all of a sudden like a drill sergeant, "Pray, pastor. pray. At this point, the egotistical young thespian in me comes alive. And I don't know what spirit was moving through me, but I find myself saying, yes, of course, let us pray. Let us gather around your loved one. And again, this shows you how new to the job I was. I didn't even ask them what they wanted to pray for. And at that time, I confess, I don't think I even remember the name of the patient that I was about to pray over. But I was caught up in it. I was there in the moment. Let us pray, I said, loud. And as I said this, I clasped my hands in front of me, but that felt unnatural. And so I threw my arms open to the sky and said, let us pray, which would have been great. But I had forgotten that I was so close to the deceased's bedside table, which still had a plate full of uneaten Jell-O on it. And when I lifted my arms up to the sky, my shirt cuff caught on the Jell-O plate, and it flipped, and it fell to the ground, and the green Jell-O splattered all over my pant leg. I took a deep breath. No one had seemed to notice, so I continued. Dear God, I said, Holy One, Lord, in this time of transition and fear and uncertainty, and like a bad Saturday Night Live skit, the moment the word uncertainty came out of my mouth, a child in the back corner of the room, probably 4 or 5 years old, he begins to vigorously empty the contents of his stomach. And at the same time, an older woman right in front of the bed begins speaking in tongues and shaking. And I have no idea what to do. So I keep praying. I pray my heart out. I pray like I've never prayed before and probably will never pray again. I go on, and at the end of every sentence that comes out of my mouth, I hear the 25 family members, minus the one throwing up and the one speaking in tongues, say, Amen, Amen, Amen. And when I'm done with the prayer, I end it with a triumphant, Amen. And they respond, Amen. And then, not knowing what else to do, I leave, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I do. I was shell-shocked. And as I exit down the hall, I hear a familiar voice call out to me. Of course, it's the nurse from earlier, and he just shakes his head and says, quite a show, Pastor. Quite a show. I remained, lost in oblivion. My face I reclined on the beloved. All ceased, and I abandoned myself, leaving my cares forgotten among the lilies. So ends the poem we know as the Dark Night of the Soul, written by St. John of the Cross in the 16th century. It's a poem that I return to quite often when I'm going through difficult times in my own life. And this story from the hospital, this first time I give care to the family of a deceased patient, is one such difficult time that the poem helped me make sense of. A time where things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And I was more uncertain by the second about who I was, and what my value was, and where the holy was. Have you been there? I get the sense that you might know what I mean when I say the dark night of the soul. We might call them different things. We don't have to use the word soul, but we all been there, right? These moments of quiet but penetrating uncertainty, where we are filled with fear, and as the poem says, where we feel like we are lost in oblivion. In the first few months I have been here at First Universalist, I have sat with quite a few of you who have told me about your own unexpected dark nights of the soul. The sudden cancer diagnoses, the losses of loved ones, the mental health struggles that exhaust you by shifting their shape and substance day by day. Just this past week, I have heard so many of you express your fear and anger and helplessness at the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. You have said to me this week, this is not what I signed up for. This is not the country I used to be able to believe in. Where is the hope here? And I've heard more of you still this week tell me about your feelings after reading the most recent United Nations report on climate change, scared for the future of our world, asking me again, where is the hope here? Where do we go from here? And this morning, I have heard from more than a few of you about the news that broke to our congregation on Friday, that Reverend Jeannie Shiro, my mentor and close colleague, will not be returning as our senior minister. Some of you, and not just a handful, have asked me today, where is the hope here? What comes next? There is no better set of questions for us to be asking ourselves. The questions you have asked me. And so before I give you my answer, I turn them back to you to reflect on during our time of musical meditation. For you, in your life right now, where is the hope there? And for you in your life right now, what comes next? Just looking at our faces today, I know many of us are hurting. And many of us are wondering if everything is going to be all right. And I will tell you, to the degree I have control over anything, which is not very much in the grand scheme of things, everything is going to be all right. But I will also tell you in the spirit of solidarity that I am personally hurting today, too. I told myself I wouldn't do it after it made me cry during the first service, but there's a little basket there that has Reverend Jeannie's name tag and a bobby pin to the side. And I looked at it again, and it was all waterworks during the song. You know, when Reverend Jeannie pitched this assistant minister job to me for the first time, I was upstairs in the room of an old house that serves as the office building for the previous congregation I served. It was a video call. And through the computer screen, Reverend Jeannie described ministry here at First Universalist. She had this clarity of vision for this congregation, all that it was and all that could be. Her eyes shone when she told me about the new building and the wonderful staff and the beautiful and bright children in our religious education program, some of whom we heard sing this morning. In the conversation, Reverend Jeannie beamed about this congregation, and there's no better word for it. She beamed about you, the congregants. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't pull any punches. She was refreshingly honest. She was prophetic in her vision. It was infectious to me. I came away from that first conversation determined to be the next assistant minister serving you all. And I remember something in particular she said later during my interview process that I want to lift up to you all today. This was after I had been offered the job, and she and I were discussing the history of the congregation and its many ministers. I'm paraphrasing here, but I remember one point she looked me dead in the eye and said something to the extent of, "This congregation is so much more than its ministers." Now, as someone who had just been hired as a minister for this congregation, this struck me as a bizarre thing to say. but I think I'm starting to understand the wisdom she was sharing with me at that moment. I've been looking into our history quite a bit since I arrived here, and I've been so impressed by the quality of ministry I am following. Some of those ministers are in the room literally right now. But I don't think they disagree with me when I say that what comes through in our history is that no matter how wonderful and warm and driven the ministers we have been, it has always been the congregation that has propelled this place to be the home of safety and love and support it has become over its 127-year history. A colleague of mine often describes ministry as a relay race. One minister picks up the baton and sprints for a while, carries it a distance, and then deposits it in the hand of the next minister. But what's important in this metaphor is that the minister is not the driver. The minister is not the figurehead. The minister is the vessel, the carrier, the one who bears witness, because the contents of that vessel, that's you. The meaning and the magic and the precious essence of what makes this congregation strong and bold and loving, that's you. Each of you. Some of you have been here for over 50 years. Some of you have been here for less than 1 hour. I have been here for 3 months. A lot has happened in 3 months. 2 weeks before I began at First Universalist, I learned that the senior minister would be on medical leave. More recently, I learned that the same senior minister who I had looked forward to learning from and serving would not be returning to supervise me. And if I'm honest, I can count on 2 hands the amount of times in the last few weeks I've asked myself the questions, what is next? Where is my hope here? But I want you to know that I haven't lingered on those questions for too long. And I'll tell you why. Because this congregation is too important to me to wallow in hopelessness. This congregation is too important to the city of Denver. The works and the witness of this congregation are too important to our world right now. There is no doubt that some of us will need to reflect and mourn and process Reverend Jane's departure in our own time. There will be opportunities over the next month to say goodbye to her ministry with us. And I'll be right there with you, crying and laughing and lamenting and celebrating. Take your time. We are here for you. We are here for one another. But after we've processed, or maybe while we're still processing, I do have a request for you as well. I'm not sure if this is selfish or not. It might be, I haven't decided. But this is a personal request, friends. I need you to keep showing up. And if I can be so bold, I invite you to do a little of what I did in the hospital, maybe without knocking the jello on the floor. That is, I invite you to stay present, to throw yourself as much as you are comfortable into the uncertainty of this moment, to keep praying, however prayer looks like to you in your life. Keep moving your feet, keep coming through these doors on a Sunday morning, keep sharing meals together. Keep the fire in the belly of this great congregation burning as it has burned for 127 years. Not because a minister like me or someone else is holding the torch, but because you believe so deeply in the promise of this place that you cannot help but let its light shine out. Because this sermon is not just about Reverend Jeannie's departure. It is about all of us who are hurting right now, for any reason. We all find ourselves gripped in the dark night of the soul sometime. We all know what it feels like to be scared in the face of an uncertain future. So to answer the question, where is the hope here? You know where it is. I've been preaching it at you for 2.5 months. Reverend Jeannie has been preaching it from this very pulpit for 8 years. The hope is one another. Does that surprise anyone when I say that? The hope is one another. The hope is us showing up again and again and being reminded that isolation is always drowned out by community, and fear is always drowned out by love. O night that guided me, O night more lovely than the dawn. For those of us who feel like we are trapped in a night that will never break, and for this congregation that is entering a period of transition that will invite us to grow and change in miraculous ways. May we be guided by the love we have for one another. May we be transformed by that love. Friends, don't run from this challenge. This is the moment that none of us expected, but it's the one we have. May we live into it with all the fullness we can muster. May we move through these coming days with no regrets. With gratitude and grace and hope, may we pick up that baton that Reverend Jeannie has left us and bring it into our own bright dawn. Let us beam, folks, like she beamed about us. Let us be the beacon for a hurting world, the beacon that we dream we can be. May it be so. I love you all. Hang in there.